Hello, everybody, and welcome to another MyMusic. Today, I'm going to be speaking to the wonderful Kelly, who's got her sofa out especially for me, which is always good because that means that when you have comfortable guests, they're always so much better. Sometimes, they wheel them in and they're sat on little tin stools and stuff like that, and they shuffle about for the half an hour that we talk. But she's got a lovely sofa today, so she'll be fine. We will be back to find out about Kelly's life in music and her new project straight after this.
Keep on, don't stop. Keep on, don't stop. Keep on, don't stop.
Kelly, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You are one of those musicians who, like so many great musicians that I know, people will have seen over the years doing their thing, right? But won't necessarily knew that they'd seen you.
Yeah,
Is that fair to say?
that's very fair to say. So my career really till this point has been as a session musician. So I've been backing artists and, I've played with lots of different people and you could well have seen me in many different situations for sure. But I'm just now making the pivot into doing music production and starting my own project. So we're kind of crossing over a little bit at this point.
Absolutely. And we'll talk about that in great detail in a bit because I just want to know how that feels, that kind of transition point from one thing to the other. But let's go back to the beginning then. When did you first start playing music?
So at school, something always drew me. I'm a guitar player primarily, so something just always drew me to guitar in music.
Yeah.
And so I just started learning guitar, then decided at 16 to study guitar at college, and just kind of carried on from there. Career-wise, in terms of doing it as a career, I'm from a place called Worthing, which is on the south coast in England.
Yeah,
and it's not
Worthing,
a place.
well.
Oh, you do. But it's not a place really where you see that many successful bands. There's been a few, but I didn't have any.
Near enough to Brighton. Brighton's cool. Worthing's on people's homes.
Brighton was definitely the cool sister of Worthing that you wanted to go and visit, like the cool older sister.
Yeah.
But I didn't really have those kind of role models where I was like, oh, I could do that, like I didn't have any kind of idea how to make a career in music. Even after I'd been and studied music, it still didn't seem necessarily a feasible thing. So I got kind of lucky with my first break into the industry, where I was working in a bar after I'd finished studying, and one of the people I was working for, it turned out he was a bass player. And he knew about an audition that was going, and it just happened to be for this artist called Tricky, who used to be a Massive Attack. And I went along and auditioned, really hadn't had very much experience to that point, but had studied. And I got the gig, and that was my first little break into the industry, which was amazing. But up until then, I would have had no idea how to get into it. So I kind of got lucky. I got lucky by talking about what I was doing, I suppose.
How pivotal was that in terms of... I mean, Tricky was such a great artist, or is such a great artist as well, in terms of it's quite dark and it's quite, diversive in a way, etc. I mean, actually getting in at that level with someone that's getting a lot of attention at the time and is actually doing something quite different. Did that help in a lot of ways? Because people were going, oh, that's different. You had to have a different sound with that as well.
Very much so. And it was really an interesting time in terms of sound. So first of all, I've always been a huge Massive Attack fan and a Tricky fan. And I had his album before I got that gig. So really it was like a dream come true for me, like at the time. And still, he's an incredible artist. And it's always amazing, when those two things come together. Because obviously when you're a professional musician, you do the gig that you're like getting paid for without wanting to sound too cynical. So when it comes to the fact that I've been very, very lucky to play for a few artists that I'm just like love the music for anyway, very lucky. And Tricky's definitely one of them. And at that time, it was an interesting point as a guitar player, because what they were doing was trying to put a lot of kind of big riffs and rock influences into these otherwise kind of more R&B influenced tracks. So a lot of Tricky stuff, it didn't necessarily have guitars in it. But when it came to playing live, they wanted these like big riffs and this big kind of rock sound.
Yeah.
So it was incredible and really formative in terms of my guitar playing and my style now still.
Yeah, because it was very much more about bass and the heavy drum sound and stuff
Exactly,
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was it a nightmare to mix?
Well, I mean, that wasn't up to me.
I know, but I mean, did you sense that it was a nightmare to mix?
I don't think so. No, actually.
No? Oh, okay.
I mean, maybe, because you're talking about his vocals. Because his vocals are so. Oh yeah, okay. I did hear a lot of that. Like, I think it was hard for them to get. He's notorious for, like, they call it a whisper vocal, and kind of like Billie Eilish kind of does the same kind of.
Yeah.
And I think she's quite hard to mix. Just getting that, you've got the band that sound really big, and the vocal that's so like intimate and like this kind of tender sound.
There. Oh yeah, there they are.
Yeah. So in that standpoint, yeah, I think getting the vocals above the band was definitely always a bit of a challenge for the mix engineer, but they always had brilliant people on board. So
yeah. How conscious were you as well of being a female guitar player and coming through? Because, you know, I guess that was a time when it was beginning to happen. It was, you know.
Yeah.
But it certainly hadn't happened, really.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a great point to make. So I definitely, when I went to the audition, they were looking for women guitar players. And they just couldn't find anyone. And I was one of the last people to come in. And by that point, they'd started auditioning guys as well. And like Tricky's always championed women musicians. And he's had women like bass players and he's always had women in his band in some form. So when I turned up at that audition, you know, they were auditioning guys, they couldn't find anyone. So when I left the audition not knowing whether I got the gig or not. I left thinking, okay, if I don't get this gig, I know I'm in quite a unique situation because there's just not very many of us. At that time, there really wasn't. I mean, I think there was about 3 in London, and you didn't have social media, so people didn't have the platform they have now, you know? So I definitely felt like, okay, this is a really positive thing to be a woman in that way. And also you were definitely lacking the role models that we kind of touched on earlier that always helps. It helps to kind of see a road ahead of you. Do you know what I mean? And like we were kind of missing, there'd been some trailblazers for sure. And there was a lot of amazing women bands at that time, like that were definitely trailblazing and that had been previously for a long time. But definitely in the session world, you didn't get very many. So I couldn't really see a path ahead of me. It was like I just had to jump in and just get going. But that niche definitely helped me out. And it gets your name around a lot quicker, for sure.
Yeah. Have you enjoyed watching how things have panned out over the last sort of 10, 20 years in terms of TikTok and, you know, young female artists showing that they can shred as well as any bloke out there and whatever? Do you know, have you really enjoyed watching that progression?
Yeah, and I just think it's such a positive thing. And it's no longer a shock for people. Do you know what I mean? But you don't, I think always as a woman, you feel you have a little bit extra to prove. And I definitely, back then, I felt that massively on my shoulders of like, I'm not just here trying to be a good guitar player for my job. I felt like I had my whole like gender to answer for. Do you know what I mean? And like to prove that women can play guitar, which is ridiculous. You know, I mean, you shouldn't have to feel like that. You're representing a whole gender.
No, but I guess there was that for men, there was that kind of whole sort of history of, you know, the blues guitar players and, you know, then sort of like the blues legends and what, and they were all men. They were all men.
That's the thing. And you see these lists, don't you? And like guitar legends, they're getting more women in there now, but like for a long time, you just didn't see a woman in there.
No. Yeah. Exactly, you know. Well, my generation, we grew up on films like Crossroads, you know. Crossroads, yeah, exactly. And it's like, I mean, no decrying Stevie, the guitar playing that is amazing, but you know, there the women figures in those films were just nowhere to be seen in terms of playing an instrument or vocally they were there. You know, you would see great female singers like Aretha Franklin in the Blues Brothers and whatever, but certainly in terms of instruments, it was always in the, you know, they were backing singers or they weren't there. And and I think it was brilliant when you started seeing women coming forward in music so much more. And it's one of the reasons we have so many women on this show. We keep saying it, because there's still a lot of poor representation of women in the industry, isn't there? And it's, you know.
And I think, providing a platform really is key, because you're talking about this history of guitar players, and there was women back then, like Rosetta Thorpe, for example. You know, you did have these women, but they didn't get the level of acknowledgement that they deserved at the time. You know, and she even had an unmarked grave for a long time, and they've given her a tombstone now. It's just ridiculous, isn't it? And then she's this trailblazer for rock and roll music.
Yeah. So
I think there were women doing it. It's just, you know, we live in a world fronted by men. So men want to, the men that were running the industry at the time, I guess, gave people opportunity that were like them. Yeah,
no, absolutely. So go on then, tell us, what was the first guitar like? Was that pretty rubbish?
Okay, so my brother was playing guitar. Yeah. And he just had this, like, do you remember, I don't know if they still have this brand now, but there was a brand called Encore that they were kind of like Squires, like the Fender kind of copies, but probably worse. So he was playing this guitar, didn't really like catch on to it. So it was just, we just had this guitar hanging around the house. And like, as I said, I was always kind of really drawn to guitar, and I was like, I want to play it. So I brought it off him for like £20. He made me pay for it. It was a £20 guitar. And that's how I got started.
And the action was what, like cheese wire? Was it hard to play?
And you know, it was such a long time ago. I can't remember. Probably. I mean, it takes a while to build those calluses up, doesn't it? So I think any level of just hitting guitar strings gets the blisters going.
I think you know, it was great that we had so many bad guitars around at one point, because in order to, you know, if you could make it sound half decent, you had to be at a fairly decent level.
100%. Yeah, 100%.
You know, you get a decent guitar, you know, you play a few chords on it, you can probably sound half decent, but a bad guitar, it takes a real expert to try and get something half decent out of that. Who have been inspirations to you along the way?
Starting out, a lot of blues stuff, and I've always been a big Hendrix fan. So Hendrix, Stevie Ray Vaughan, the kind of 70s sound. But then also like a lot of kind of girl groups like X-Ray Specs, you know, like women fronted bands, that kind of thing, the kind of 80s stuff as well, and 90s stuff. That was a really good era. 80s and 90s were a really good era for women in bands. Like I remember when I first started playing guitar, I didn't think this is an unusual thing to be a woman playing guitar. It wasn't until a little bit later when I kind of actually got into the industry, I was like, oh, okay, actually, there's not that many.
Yeah.
But I think you did get quite a lot of women on TV and bands and stuff in the 90s.
How did you feel when people like Madonna started coming through? And because I mean, I remember Madonna when she first started, etc. And just, you know, there was definitely a feel like, whoa, things are really going to change for women now, because because it was completely owned, you know.
Yeah.
Did that make a big difference to you as well?
I mean, that, like, I wasn't really there to see that impact, but that must have been amazing. I can't remember something that I felt like, oh, this is a shift. I think that when I was listening to music, I was just listening to music that I loved. I don't think that I was ever really that impacted of like, oh, okay, I can really see that this person's like traveling.
I've always thought too much about that whole thing.
You're not wrong though. I'm sure a lot of people would have felt like, okay, this person's almost giving me permission to be who I want to be.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important in an artist.
I think it's great for any generation where someone comes along and, as you say, gives them permission or makes them feel like they could do this. You know,
exactly that, yeah.
And I think there's some artists at the moment that seem to be doing that. I think people like Chapel Rain and whatever kind of doing that as well in terms of it's okay to speak out about these things. And, you know, maybe the industry isn't, well, we've known for ages that the industry isn't all it cracked up to be, but, you know, it's good when artists that have made it, who perhaps in the past would have kept silent about it because that's paying their way, and now saying, I'm going to talk about this, and it's
brave, you know, because like you said, it is paying your way, and it's hard to speak up against something that's feeding you, isn't it? You know. Yeah,
but then again, I guess it's that whole thing about, well, who needs who here? They you know, it's a very broken industry, isn't it? Have you seen, as you see the changes happening in terms of, I mean, when you were with Tricky, I mean, people were still buying CDs and, you know, money was being thrown at.
There was a lot of money. Yeah, definitely. I've seen the changes. Yeah. And the shift from CDs to streaming, you can see a lot of change in terms of the money that's floating around, and like touring budgets are a big thing, you know, now with everything that's happened with Europe and stuff, how it's getting so expensive for people to tour, you know, it is getting a lot harder.
Yeah. How have you personally sort of kept sort of on top of that?
I mean, for me, it's a bit different. And maybe that's something that I'm going to find out now that I'm doing my own project.
Now you're going to find it. Yeah.
Because for me, I've been employed by people. So I've been lucky enough, I guess, to be kind of like shielded from that side of things. Because, you know, I'm not at the front of a project. So, and I think the artists that I've worked for as well have been more on the old school side of things in terms of that they were around when there was a lot of money in the industry. So they have that kind of backing still behind them. And especially, like, I think still now live, when you've built up that career over a number of years and that you can go and play live, I think there is still a nice amount of money in touring when you're at that level. So I've been lucky enough, like as a session musician, you know, to just go along for the ride, basically.
Well, now you've got to put your face on the T-shirt now.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It's quite different, isn't it?
Yeah. How does that feel? How does that transition feel?
Well, it makes me, I've always obviously appreciated the artists that I've worked for, but you kind of realize the depth of things, you know, when you've come like and done, like shaped the whole project. You know, I've been learning music production really over the last 5 years, and I'm putting out this project now where I've written and produced all the songs. And I guess you can kind of see exactly the weight of everything that's behind it. So for me, like generally as a session musician, you know, you pick up an artist when they've recorded the album and you're going to go on tour with it. So you're kind of jumping in over halfway probably through the process. Do you know what I mean? Right at the end when everything's kind of flying. So now I'm at the point where, okay, I've got to make it fly, you know?
Well, now you've been picked in the past. You've been the one being picked. How did you find it picking? What was that like? And what was your sort of criteria for I'm going to work with them on this?
Okay. Yeah. So in my project, I'm collaborating with a lot of different artists because I'm not a singer. So I basically write the songs, demo them with my ropey vocals, and then have to be brave enough to
send it,
to listen to them and be like, can you hear the potential in this song of my terrible singing? So I found, firstly, there's bands that I've just really loved for a while. So my single that's out now called Embody is with a band called the Pearl Hearts, who are absolutely brilliant. And I've known them for a while. So that was kind of like a port of call where it kind of came together in terms of I love them as an act. Like I love their music. They're incredible.
Yeah. And
I also knew them. So it was a bit of a like softer landing than going in straight away cold with someone that I didn't know at all. So luckily I sent them off a demo and they loved it. And that's my first single now, which is out now, called Embody. And we've got some other songs coming up. I've got a song with Chloe Foy. I don't know if you know, do you know Chloe Foy? She's a brilliant singer. And she's got an album coming out as well, actually. So she's going to be on one of my upcoming singles. Just what drew me to her is that she's got such a like soft and tender voice that was so different from like the Pearl Hearts, for example, who were like kind of rocky and like just energy. And she's just like really kind of tender vocals. So I think I was kind of looking for real like juxtapositions in terms
shade and light, shade and dark.
What people could deliver to the song, so we could like really have these different styles going on.
That's lovely. No, absolutely. Who was the can you tell us who was the biggest surprise to get on this project?
I mean, I don't know. I don't think anyone was, say, a surprise, but they've all been amazing. It was one of those things where it just came together, as in like everyone's voice just sounded so right for the song.
Yeah.
I think that was a big part, actually, when you were asking about how I chose, is that I kind of knew what I wanted to get across with the song in terms of like attitude and emotion, and then found the singers where I was like, okay, yeah, I think this person can really deliver this kind of attitude or this kind of energy, you know?
Is there outside of what you've already done, is there a kind of dream collaboration awaiting in the wings for the future? who, you know, if we could dial up anybody today, who would that be?
Oh my gosh. So many people. I'd love to work with Beth Ditto, who I actually played guitar for. She's incredible.
What a voice.
I'd love to do some of her stuff. So many people, you know, Chapel Rowan.
That could happen though, right? Because you do know us.
Yeah. She's back with the Gossip at the moment, who are obviously amazing. But if she does another solo project, you never know.
Yeah, and you said Chapel Roan there as well.
I mean, what she's doing, like you said, it's just so punk, isn't it? That kind of attitude.
Yeah. Well, look, anyone that can get Elton John to dress up and dance like that with that hat on, right? Well, absolutely brilliant. And I think what's nice about her is that, you know, she's written those songs, and she's been playing some of those songs for quite a while. I mean, Pink Pony Club goes back some years. So
yeah. She got dropped, didn't she, before?
Yeah.
So it's that resilience, isn't it, that you've just got to really foster in this industry.
I think that's nice that people are actually getting to see that you know, she's earned this, you know, as opposed to she suddenly just appeared from nowhere. And she's got real belief in the songs, because that's ultimately what musicians are about, right? You know, you believe in what you're putting out there. So tell us then, so when are people going to get to hear all of this in its full glory?
Okay, well, Embody's out now, which is the first single, and then the plan is now just to really build from that. So we're going to start releasing probably monthly now. I've got a good few songs in the pipeline. Yeah. So that's exciting. Have you got video ideas for all of these? The videos are all done.
They're all done.
All good to go, Graham. It's all set up.
All good to go.
We're good to go.
I've spent ages.
It has been. It's been quite the journey to get to this point. But then the next thing to do is to take it live. So that for me is so exciting as well, because as much as I absolutely love studio and music production and the whole writing the song, but I think the weight of my career experience so far has been doing like live work. So I'm excited to take it live and see where we can take it with that.
How do you then bring that together live? Because obviously when you're working on a project and you're the music creator, etc., and you're pulling in voices, etc., do you then have to go out and audition people to be those different voices? Do you have to
So I think there's good examples of people out there that are doing it, you know, like I guess a lot of like kind of more like DJ type producers, like Disclosure, for example. Even Tricky. So Tricky, when I was working with him, he'd have a lot of different singers on his album, but then he'd go out with just one singer that would cover the whole thing.
Yeah.
You know, so I think with that, in terms of taking it live, it would just be trying to find one singer that could kind of cover the whole thing.
You've got to be a damn good singer.
Yeah. But there's lots of really talented people out there.
Really? So. I'm saying you've got to be a really good singer. I'm pointing at the audience at this point. If you're up to it, if you're listening to this, you're up to it, because I know a lot of musicians listen to this, and I'm going to invite you into our little community later as well. And we've got lots of musicians in there as well. So if you're listening and you really fancy a challenge here, then you can always get in touch with Kelly and you can, see whether it works out.
Yeah, do. I'm always looking for singers, so definitely.
Absolutely. I would do it, but I'm getting too old now, Kelly. I might just come and wave. And if I'll tell you what, I'd happily come up and compare and introduce you. How about that? That would
amazing.
That would be fine. Anything else these days, I think, would be probably a little bit too much. Listen, it's been an absolute pleasure. I wish we could talk for more time, but time is of the essence and whatever. But it's been beautiful to meet you, get to know a little bit about you. Perhaps come back at some point. Because I think we could explore a little bit more. I think once you've got the whole project out, it'd be lovely to get you back and talk about how it's been received and maybe listen to some of the songs and get some reaction live from people as well.
Oh, that would be amazing, Graham. Yeah.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the amazingly talented Kelly Appleton. Please do go and check out her music. Connect with her on the old Instagram, etc., and say hi. And as I say, we will be inviting her into the community as well, which you can join. The links are on mymusicpodcast.com for you to go and do that as well. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do go and share it amongst your community so that Kelly gets lots of people at her gigs, and we'll buy the t-shirts of her face, which she hasn't printed yet, but she will. Kelly, thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to speaking to you soon.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Graham.
Cheers. Thanks everybody for listening. Bye for now.